Hello, species value nature system. Hello, sovereign bank. This is an unpaid advertisement for sovereign bank. This is no joke. You ever see the movie Stand By Me? With the concept of a school without that can't afford means to sue in relationship to all the juxtaposed interbranch, intermilitary, foreign juxtaposed left, tactically forsaking volume of human factory nature, overtly, even in the suburbs, overtly, sickly, distinctly, the suburbs are nature of city, in the urban cities. So, you know, there's a completely a fact-cheaping nature racket where there's pseudoscience defending itself by defending the sensibilities of colleagues. You know, the phenomenon of misprision criminality and a manifest relationship to an as where our nature is value as nature is relationship to itself. A little bit more semi-nature of what is the complete nature's identity that it will only be and stay, coming into and as the gaining value nature relationship of temporary lasting space nature as identity. Now this is the course boxing, of course, I tell you things, because this is truth. The identity that is simultaneously finite, body of value discernment, grouped, in other words, and sexes with that, and species body value, all bonded, further bonded as a value nature relationship to itself, value nature relationship to itself. English was real to teach this. As temporary positive, while as a lasting quality diffusion unceasingly, we are always value I. Even though physical life stops at X, the walls of our body are of a value nature relationship to an as this that is this to not only to ourselves, our own nature's value, that bonded value, but that values complete identities, simultaneous semi-nature relationship to the identity of all things, boxings, all things at once. So the ancients knew that they needed to be able to talk about the identity of existence of as all things at once, as a quality of fact treatment nature. They didn't have problems agreeing about the name of it, because even when they didn't agree, they found out that when English is value positive, when it's not always, it is also value positive to a nature of value as Latin, as a volume simultaneously with the nature and value of Arabic, at the same time in relationship to the nature of statute treatments. See, now this is more than theoretical, because it's based on lies and delusions, first offensively. So these are theories that are pretending theory and pretending that you can't discern what is discernible. In other words, when you value finite individual rights, value nature relationship, nature what? The identity. How could it be the same thing? There's the only thing that is all things at once. The identity of a nature, the identity of each cell of your body has a complete identity by itself, simultaneously as an unceasingly valuable semi-nature relationship to your complete identity, to the complete identity of an organ that each of the cells is. Not a doctor, not a police form, not criminal. Interest the sciences share an identity. This is why the predicate act in the predicate of English, the predicate act of law with organized crime, they show that an identity can have, like associated with the predicate act, it's going to have an inherently, actively, and progressively negative relationship to itself. The value of identity, the value of sequence treatment, honest, not exploiting exception nature, too, because that's how there's a hierarchical of identity, whereas the complete identity of existence will only stay gaining perfect value progression. That each modern nation was forced to tactical ulterior market positions, jobs, and relationships to that, including especially regarding jobs of state in areas, interbranch, private, juxtaposed, policing of what you can't defend policing of, defend the pseudo-positives of, and us at the same time from the fact treatment nature racket that use black and white, black pupils, whites of eyes. This is a course, different colorized because what is distinctly and non-distinctly onto itself and as itself, the identity of all things at once, is a demonstration to us. This is why and how we know that the ancients know when you're trying to value progressively, inherently, actively, and progressively, when you're trying to value individual value, grouped value, means states, areas, sexes, ages, and progressive value, those three things together. Progressive value, in other words, progression, the value of identity. Then you cause evolution. This is where prayer is also discernibly juxtaposed with and as real science, because it's a correlation. It's a nature of correlation that you can't do with a computer. Without, in other words, so in other words, this is an algorithm. This is the original algorithm. So we'll examine how someone like me, only an expert on the nature of English grammar, could teach about something. I'm not even a math guy. Never even took the courses. But I mean, anything can be measured. This is a different kind of measurement. This is the measurement of what is value always, as exception and nature at the same time. So we have that exploited. We have pseudo-positive as a criminal insidious nature originally, worse than not explained about our founders, their identities stolen. There are proofs that George Washington said, even if he didn't say it, that someone put it because they play fact treatment nature to make us debate with and as ourselves short of a quality of fact treatment nature needed to defend ourselves from what juxtapose all the natures of crime. More than 99.9% of the crimes demonstrably caused by the organized crime method that used slavery, that used color, to obfuscate this course. That is about why how the identity of all things is simultaneously, distinctly, and non-distinctly onto and as the value of all parts of itself. As us. As a value progression, and as an identity of value progression, that fact treatment nature is required to speak about it that way. As an identity of value progression, that these markets are tactically ulterior from. What is the identity of what causes positive or negative value nature progressions to markets is from and as an agreed you know, commonly ignored how it is being exploited in and as each modern nation blamed on others, not themselves. The real causes of 99.9% of the crimes. Infrastructure, tactically denatured relationships to nature, means to them value nature system through a system that was forced since before our founders' births. Sickly. Our fact treatment nature enslaved founders, enslaved to roles. In other words, to fight about that and then have to defend that, simultaneously incapable of not being in defense of what is needed to hide its premises treatments, juxtaposed with criminal foreign influences through the sciences, not even debatable. Even with treatments modern, present of Jim Crow laws, black and white rhetoric, treatments of racism, recorded, used to further psychological diagnosis of fake conditions put on, especially on people from urban areas hurt the most by it. What is distinctly and non-distinct, what is non-distinctly hurting everybody, sickly distinctly, and it is sickly distinctly hurting everyone to keep how non-distinctly blamed on others and ourselves as a crime method. And that's recorded. Only the extent of it is debatable. See, but we have people that will debate offensive overall convictions after and while the whole time when people try to report crime acts, sequence shifts, evidence fabrication natures correlation. That's not let reported. They're reliant upon, in courts, when we report, they're relying upon experts to raise as jobs with types of crimes. You can't, and that were originally juxtaposed roles to interests, a whole bunch of different interests with the organized crime members of against our founders, and them having left us to free the people hurt most by it, Native Americans and everybody, especially black and white, with fact treatment nature. See, because this is not to compare, because it wasn't from a source of ourselves. And if we start trying to settle that, we're working with what is not capable of just using the sequence shifts and of the recorded physical delusions into science and exploitations of them in courts and cases originally and still. In other words, you could see that we had correlation nature capable, regular citizens, interbranch people, and foreign mixed, capable of demonstrating people lying, but not doing it. And then just, that's everybody exploiting that, not by accident. Everyone was a tactically denatured relationship to nature as means. Because when you really understand how and why the sciences share an identity, is an active value nature relationship. To values nature, what is only going to stay perfect value progression. And that's not going to be healed through markets that pretending that positive in relationship to overt negatives like war, they wouldn't even be there if you really allowed free speech. Mandated law. We have mandated law not let because we have states and areas interbranch private with them, intercampuses, and all that, maintain her off and then on off campuses in collusion, needing to keep correlation nature worse than subjugated, tortured, pseudo cared for at once, simultaneously. The completely a fact-cheating nature racket that used the method of juxtaposing color with the law, of juxtaposing such crazy laws about it anyone could even speak. See, now they were holding everybody as what our nature craves positive. See, they understood the devil, the organized crime method that built this, used that tactic with all the other ones, understood that the ancients understood slavery before. While they were valued, before it was physical like a crazy, they understood a sophistication nature. They understood how and why the predicate and the predicate act are simultaneously a value-nature relationship to values complete, to value and to values complete nature, which is inseparable from its own, from and as its own identity of value progression, which we are only positive or negative in relationship to the phenomenon of the semi-nature of it, which is it'll only stay a complete nature relationship to itself, but a little bit more of itself is coming in with and as what is causing our quality of diffusion, our quality of our nature of volume as identity nature, as forever nature, being more and more volume that is positive or negative in relationship to it. Now, if you take a battery and you put it in a plane, a remote control plane, it flies, and the battery is charging it. So negative is not ground. This is alpha and omega. This is about polarity nature. They put negative. Ground has to do with electricity. You don't want to be touching the ground when you touch, in other words. But that's because the identity of electricity is demonstrably the complete nature, the complete identity of all things unto itself at once, which is ground, space, temporary lasting space, and which is an identity that was before that generated this into physical. Value nature is inside values nature. Just like a cell is inside our body as a value nature relationship to the value of our identity. Harder than our body and softer than anything at the same time as a quality of diffusion that is once forged state as a side, which is, in other words, this is what causes Lethe of Hades, the identity of all things at once unto itself as a positive or negative relationship to itself. Force space nature transfer when negative. Well, how negative? So that was pseudo care at the same time. Then it just didn't go away. It invested people to roles and natures as a pathology, as a negative value nature progressions, unrealizing how that is exploited. Each individual grouped together progressively and sequentially. Each name, each family name. This is interfamily, everybody's victim predator. Because it's a fact cheating nature record, identity theft. They put people in classes and connect people when they're training police that are shared originally still criminally foreign influenced. they make exceptions to who they need to pretend knows people, because they're painting people to fake locations and relationships and conversations to others. They're investing, overt criminal enterprises and investing interbranch, intermilitary, especially psychology, private, with area crimes together, with database crimes, and evidence perception crimes that are then what they have the overt criminal enterprise juxtaposed for, because they need to keep the investigations sustained. The needs for the natures of the investigations sustained. All kinds of chaos at once. They already have what you can't defend being trained as and training as with kids, and then themselves as adults after they have formal fact treatments. So what they do, the Constitution stands abridged, originally and still. So what they do too is now have this fact treatment nature racket that used interbranch actors, intermilitary, for fact treatment nature racket with black and white, even with treatments of Jim Crow, of the Civil War, 1860, 1865. That's still inside the Revolution. Our founding fathers and our American history's identity is still stolen. They're still pretending not to realize by pretending passions and emotions dishonestly and with delusions, pretending that Marbury versus Madison means fake it. I'm not a lawyer. Real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. Doesn't mean fake it. That means follow mandated law. They're caught. They're caught. It's good. They know it's they have 6 statutes, precedents. They can't even admit what they do because they'll be in jail for the rest of their lives. Whether we're putting people there. Not even innocent people. These are knave, bad things, boxing, branches, bad things, branches, states and areas in collusion, each modern nation. They have the religions tactically allied with the sensibilities of positions of jobs of United States and areas, private and interbranch, intermilitary identities of jobs, all not by accident, forced to reliance upon other natures of experts. For example, when someone points out recorded crime methods, acts, and natures in collusion, interbranch. Where we have misprision criminality, them also stacking names, because that's how they were facilitated to this. This is completely a live progression engineering and maintenance method that is maintenance to having everyone maintain their own needs, natures, and roles as victim predators needed to blame their acts, natures, and roles on others and pretend not to realize. Sequence shift styles. It was recorded that, pretending to be against racism was consciously being used to hide roles with those groups being used to cover up mistreatments of, pseudo-positive. Criminal insidiousness nature takes about fact treatment nature, trick fact treatment nature, evidence fabrications, identity thefts. Crime methods exploiting how everyone's reliant upon databases and other people's words. And they don't take the mandated law because they have, if you try to tell on them the whole time in the background, they're still trying to set up more, they're stacking databases, faked arresting officers, faked arrests, foreign and domestic in collusion, intermilitary, interbranch through time, off campuses, then on-off campuses maintain criminally foreign influenced identity thefts, database illusion stacking, sequence shifting, name switching predators. Worse, fake news, slander, extortion. That was what facilitated their crime rolls. Natures actually recorded the correlation, nature, or Trinity, to worse than dishonestly obfuscated. Obfuscated means not made, not understood. Sabotaged value, nature, relationship we have to ourselves, as value, as nature. Inside values complete nature. Like sayings that take things. So we can't entertain that, those pseudo-positives, because the identity of existence wants us to use a quality of truths that is also true as all exceptions. We have exceptions recorded, consciously set up, but facilitated through the criminal influences of the people involved as kids, used for the roles with recorded offensive evidence reception, identity thefts, database illusion stacking, maintenance to intercampuses positions and family members with it, maintained, facilitated for, and by, and only semi-as enough to know they have to apply their own personal and grouped roles with areas and states inclusion from, what's his name? Everyone involved, all levels of state leaders. I really think it's a joke. The suit and tie is still people stacking Hartford, Connecticut, right next to the river. But what it's in the way? The dump. Jump. These are not means. You can't afford means, which is a nature's relationship to itself. The only way to afford that is to free speech. Now, the Constitution's abridged. You know, we have shared policing here, there, and as modern nations. Russians are victims, Americans are victims of what our police are in collusion with, pretending not to realize. They know that they're also, Kathy Tansey also, she wasn't repeating what I said because I didn't say it, and I was watching people using that. She pretended I had a conversation with her about the CIA. She, with others, pretended I even knew her. Criminally set up the one exception after she graduated. So that's also tied to people that, and her roles with Klotz family, foreign and domestic, with police forms. People attaching me to fake conversations. People with crimes with MPs, forging doctors' names, roles, even if they, CCSU crime roles. Detective Smuda, on and off campuses, police forms, crime roles. Crime roles with other police form intercity with federal criminals who are co-defendants of former director of the FBI. Also tied to approving post-dated documents to appear late before, that appeared to appear late as proven before a panel of judges in the Ninth Circuit Trade Center attack context. Further recorded, confessed, and demonstrated a Scalora family. Other families associated with drugs with kids through time. Identity theft clicks through time. Acting so they could exploit exceptions now that they set up in the past, like in Glastonbury with the Scalora family. Pretending they knew me from a distance, yelling stuff out. Acting. They all did this different ways. The people involved criminally, like a Delaferro family with the judges criminally involved. Sequence shifting too. With tricks where they pretend that they're trying to judge things with integrity. They know when they're recorded they're not. They're sequence shifting, switching names, and just pretend they're using quick they're doing worse than that. Inclusion, whole bunch of names. Then they're pretending they have integrity with colleagues, with no evidence, making them up, sticking things in the databases, and that's why they pretend the short time they don't have time to go into all those things. A whole bunch of they're just stacking it. Since before the Trade Center attack, I was trying to report, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated criminal uses of Hartford, Middletown, and New Britain Court, New Britain Superior Court, other natures of courts, their family members, people tied to them, criminally involved, foreign and domestic military family, Just Kovinskis, his wife. You know, they use them also criminally involved with DACA people, like tied to Washington with this criminally, like a Chris Walters. Also, confessed and recorded, facilitated crime rules with Eric Jensen. Police forms with mobile gas stations, and before I went to work there too, sequence shifts tied to that. And before I went to work at UPS, Joshua Stroika, that I never had a conversation with, recorded and confessed with crimes with identity thefts, federal crimes with databases, with my other natures of crimes at Trinity College at CCSU, with the same off campuses, facilitated and maintained on campuses criminally foreign influence roles with off campuses investigated criminally involved. A Dr. Lethe forging and switching names, attaching me to fake conversations with him that weren't at all. 3 times affecting demonstrations, confections, and recorded crime rolls with child sex offender cliques, also as drug offender cliques, also as child identity theft cliques, and worse than interstate through time. Recorded, this was people with recorded facilitated crime rolls with the fact-cheating natures in various ways with the Trade Center, various ways with Washington, D.C., simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, sick intercampuses through time. I just remind. They know that's recorded various ways, but they're pretending other. That's why we have to have the judges' names in sequence, because they're coaching the area crime rolls. Also, since right when I came back, an O'Brien family demonstrated that tied to their past confessions and crime rolls with a whole bunch of people, where was fact-cheating nature rackets. I don't know if they're just victim predators, all predators, you know, with the corner of the street of the principal sex offender and of Hangdog Lane, where it goes into 2-rod highway, with a bunch of other houses recorded and confessed criminally involved. Brian Bowen, I don't know him, I only know him. Then he demonstrated criminal involvements with it as an adult, with an Arch Pizza, with years ago with his relationship to drug stuff, with the Wawa, and the policing of and roles with off campuses, then off campuses crimes. I never saw him on campus in my life. Also, Maria Vizino recorded, confessed, many others with her area. So also the South Seville tied to the Eric Clark. Also crime rolls with the transition from ACA to RICO through WFS Beach crimes with a Fienza family. Recorded and confessed as crime rolls with advertising companies and with the media, all the positions of that and their policing retired and standing, and their roles with crime acts and cases, and crimes with databases, clicks, on and off campuses and on and off campuses criminally involved, like with a principal sex offender, like with their uses of the daughters of people associated with interactions with hospitals, advertisement too. That money's owed. We have people that we don't have time for this stuff. I've been asking this, and they also stack confessions from strangers intercity because they know you're trying to tell on this over here, so they keep delaying. Then they invest people to justify that as federal crime rules, federal evidence crime rules. In other words, our private police, our regular police, foreign families, maintaining this, the outcome there and here. Consciously exploiting how we're juxtaposed with a whole bunch of nations, pretending to be against that, just because part of the Russians got caught. They probably need them to get caught so they can just pretend that it's fake sides. Aren't that? So there's a club downtown in a building tied to that sought me out to demonstrate it was true. Allegro Cafe. God, I don't know his name. Tied to whole fans of family intercity through time, criminally involved, with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso, and with 2 news articles, and with state police, and with forensics places, with crimes rolls with that, with the identity thefts, and with child sex offenders used to hide their live aggressions tied to that, and tied to Trade Center predicate acts. Predicate acts in relationship to uses of programs with Washington tied to areas that are being used to keep criminally foreign influenced prison cliques. Database relationships with undercover juxtaposed with overt criminal enterprises needed to hide the same finite body of value, sequential shifts, all kinds of things like that. Identity crimes, that's identity theft, black and white, still that the course demonstrated why we have distinctly, and we have non-distinctly, everyone, whites of eyes and black pupils. Why distinctly, non-distinctly, we have different color eyes? Because the identity of existence is in demonstration in all ways, by being invisible but still discernible, because it is simultaneously, distinctly and non-distinctly onto, and as the value of even of the as the order to, and as all finite value, active, invisible but still discernible value, and progression value simultaneously. The course returns. They must drop before us. Each science fails. But they make negative ground negative because they're obfuscating. They're worse than obfuscating. That and how our temporary positive nature has a further unceasingly valuable relationship that is positive or negative in relationship to the perfect value gain, progression of the phenomena of a semi-nature, which is a little bit more and more of the complete identity already inseparable